The C8 generation began production in 2018 as a 2019 model year vehicle after its reveal at the 2018 Geneva Motor Show. European and some world market buyers have the Avant model from launch, while the USA gets this in 2020 but restricted to the RS6 and all-road models. As a side note, the RS6 will soon get its own guide, but the S6 will be covered in this video. As the A6 was built to meet strict iteration of Euro 6 emissions, all engines are offered with mild hybrid engines unless they are a plug-in hybrid model. Diesel engines returned despite the launch of the A6 being surrounded in Dieselgate turmoil. However, strong sales of diesel models previously and the ongoing demand for diesel justified both the 2-litre and the 3-litre diesel engine. However, later in the A6 production, particularly after 2022, the 3-litre disappeared from most markets. The Asian market would receive an A6 in 2019, with China getting 2 petrol engine options, while Southeast Asia gets the A6 for the first time in 2019, and India not only sells the model from 2019, but also builds the car in the region. The only 2 other factories that builds the A6 are the joint Audi FAW factory in China and the German factory in Neckarsulm. Specifications across the A6 range will vary depending on region, but naming follows previous A6 models beginning with the SE and Sport, or Premium, then S-Line, Black Edition and Vorsprung. Above this is the S6 model with the 3-litre diesel engine in European markets and a 2.9 TFSI engine in North America and the Middle East and Asia. Used buyers should note that sales are strongest in 2019 and 2020, with a rebound in 2023 after the supply issues of 21 and 2022. So if you're looking for a particular model, then these are the best years to look at. Now, there is a facelift for the 2023 year model Audi A6. This brings it more in line with the styling cues from the Audi A8. However, it is a fairly mild update, as has been the case with all the A6 generations, to be fair. It also adds in a few little additional extras and optional extras from the previous generation as standard fit equipment, but that will depend on your market. Moving on to safety, the A6 scored a full 5 stars at Euro NCAP. With a 93% adult occupancy, it scored strongly at North American IIHS with superior crash protection and achieved a Top Safety Pick Plus award in 2021. Next up are the common faults, but a reminder to add a like if you enjoy the video, and if you want car buying tips, check out the Miles Driven website. On the plus side, the C8 generation Audi A6 doesn't have some of the major component failures that some cars do, although, as it has not reached a decade old yet, only time will tell. Here are some of the issues to look out for though. The top is an electrical issue, including faults in Audi Pre-Sense Monitor or Main Beam Assist, or a common one, which is the brake servo restricted, usually found to be faulty sensors in the brake servo. All of these cause repeated trips to the dealer to solve and usually ended up with the battery failing. Resolutions were usually found to be replacing a module or sensor. If the battery of an A6 is ever run flat more than once, or shows any signs of low voltage, it should be changed as preventative. The cost of a new battery will pay for itself, in comparison to the multiple hours it costs many owners in labour to track down a problem created by low voltage store on a battery. Suspension components wearing prematurely, especially on cars driven on poor road surfaces like washboard unsealed roads in Australian outbacks, or a British high street for example, will wear the control arm bushings, robbing the car of its more direct feel from behind the wheel. If you hear a rattle from the dashboard on test drive, it has probably been driving the previous owners mad. The most common is a gap between the bottom of the centre console and the top of the centre console. Most owners that got this fixed took it to Audi under warranty, but some wedged a piece of plastic or soft tape between the two and resolved the issue. The touch-activated rear reading lights have become overly sensitive on some cars and will turn on and off randomly, so if it's a bright day on test drive, keep an eye back there, as it won't be obvious if your test drive is in poor light or late in the afternoon or early evening. A leak in the rear footwell should be looked for. Have a feel for any dampness or a musty smell. You'll need to lift the mat out of the back to check the area. Front cameras, if fitted, can become inoperable because the bus memory becomes filled and slows down the module, leaving it out of sync with the rest of the system. Fortunately, a software update and system reset should resolve this issue. If you're looking for a Black Edition model or one that has optional black optics pack fitted, check along the edges of the trim for discoloration. It will look like it has burned off on the edges, leaving a red or purple colour on the edge. As an aside, although Audi took responsibility for this and mentioned a faulty batch of painted items was to blame, I am tempted to note that this discoloration is not uncommon on other cars, and when I worked in the trade, we always believed it was due to harsh chemical cleaners, especially on black trim. If you live in the UK, Built Amber are my go-to for pre-wash and shampoo. and I believe they ship worldwide. This isn't sponsored, just a personal note. While there were several positive owner reports from owners passing 100,000 miles or even 200,000 kilometre marker after a year of trouble-free ownership, the main problems owners were reporting were technology. For used buyers, the hope would be that most of these electrical issues are now resolved, but well worth checking on a test drive. Moving on to the recalls, and in 2020 there was a single recall for a starter alternator on the 2-litre TFSI engine with mild hybrid system. The recall affected cars built up to March 2020. In 2021 there were 3 recalls, the first for a defect on the front passenger airbag on 2020 model year vehicles, the second due to an erroneous seatbelt warning on 2018 to 2021 built cars, and the third due to rear axle nuts manufactured outside of tolerance, causing additional movement and vibration between the wishbone and hub carrier. A single recall was announced in 2022 due to some of the cars that had replaced axle nuts having not been properly aligned at the dealer after the repair and needing an adjustment. This may wear the rear tyres unevenly if not repaired. In 2023 there were 2 recalls, the first for water ingress on the gateway control unit on 2018 to 2022 cars, causing several functions and assists to become inoperable. An engine or gearbox warning advising the driver that the car must be stopped was also a known effect of the control unit failing. The second recall was for 2018 to 2022 built cars due to a manufacturing defect noted in the fuel level indicator, which would send faulty readings. Next up are the engines, and there are essentially 4 petrol engines and 2 diesel engines in the regular A6 and S6 model. Starting with the 2-litre turbo petrol engine coded EA888 and fitted across the entire VW group, it is usually badged with a 40 TFSI or 45 TFSI. The 40 will have 201 brake horsepower, while the 45 gets 242 brake horsepower, with average fuel economy quoted at 34 miles per gallon or 8.31 litres per 100 kilometres. Generally, the EA888 is reliable, however note the engine is sensitive to servicing regimes, and if an owner has left the car too long without a service, it can cause bills further down the line. There was a note from some owners of oil and coolant mixing through the oil cooler, however it seems uncommon on the A6 model, but worth checking the oil level on a potential purchase. The 2-litre also makes an appearance in a plug-in hybrid model, the 50 and 55 TFSI e-Quattro, offered in some markets from 2021, and with a combined 295 brake horsepower in the 50 and 362 brake horsepower in the 55. The 50 model has 40 miles or 65 kilometres, while the 55 has a range of 32 miles or 51 kilometres. These models grew in popularity over the last couple of years of the A6 lifespan, but were rarer to find, and with only just coming out of warranty on the earliest models, it has been reasonably reliable for owners so far. Then there is the 3-litre V6 engine in the regular 55 model making 335 brake horsepower with an official average of 32.8 miles per gallon or 8.59 litres per 100 kilometres. Although this model was quite rare in Europe, looking globally there are owners that have covered high mileage and have been happy with the car and found it to be reliable. Looking more broadly through Audi's range, several other models were fitted with the 3-litre V6 and also report good reliability. If there was a problem, it was usually the thermostats, but these are not a particularly challenging repair for a specialist or dealer. Overall, this was a go-to model for those that occasionally carried heavy luggage and sometimes needed a car powerful enough to tow, but mostly wanted reliability and didn't need the added torque of a diesel model for towing regularly, or weren't offered a diesel option. For world market cars outside of Europe, the S6 models gets the 2.9 TFSI engine making 444 brake horsepower for an average of 27 miles per gallon or 10.46 litres per 100 kilometres. Some of you may recognise this engine and output as it is very similar to the RS4. Overall sales are relatively low on the S6 model, as most jump up to the RS6 or are happy with the 3-litre V6, but from the ones that have been sold, reliability has been strong. Just note this data is from a relatively small sample size. On to the diesels, and there is a 2-litre diesel which is by far and away the most popular option for diesel buyers. The 35 and 40 TDI model both have a 2-litre engine, but with power jumping from 161 brake horsepower in the 35 to 201 brake horsepower in the 40 model. Fuel economy is rated at 47.1 miles per gallon or 6 litres per 100 kilometres. As the 2-litre TDI architecture has been around for years before this generation A6, it was both well refined and reliable in the A6. Owners should note that EGR and cooler failures are one of the issues a small proportion of owners have reported. A few unlucky ones faced premature turbo failure. Sometimes this will give early signs of failure by a noticeable whistle, no matter what load the engine is under or the temperature. Very high mileage drivers have found the limit of the DPF, and it's lasted around 120,000 miles or 200,000 kilometers on cars driven long distances regularly, but will eventually need replacing like any exhaust emissions equipment. Then there is the 3-litre V6 TDI, fitted in the 45 and 50 TDI model and producing 228 brake horsepower and 282 brake horsepower. Fuel economy is quoted at 39.2 miles per gallon or 7.21 litres per 100 kilometres. As these are known to be sturdy and reliable, most owners' complaints are centred around the DPF failure or other emissions equipment needing a repair or replacement. However, overall this wasn't that common. The 3-litre TDI is most popular in the Q7 and VW Touareg models, and so looking at them for wider issues is reassuring in that again most owners report positive ownership experiences. A rare but costly fault some owners experience was an injector or multiple injectors becoming gummed up, blocked or failing. Some were able to get these repaired while others went for costly replacements. Using high quality fuel can help mitigate some of the risk. The S6 model in Europe pumps up the 3-litre TDI to 344 brake horsepower, giving it a 0 to 62 mph time or 0 to 100 km time of just 5 seconds, just half a second slower than the 2.9 petrol powered S6. Fuel economy is rated at 38.7 miles per gallon or 7.3 litres per 100 km, and so while fuel economy was similar to the lower powered 45 and 50 models, a higher price steered most diesel customers back towards the regular A6 model. The S6 wasn't helped by rarely being at dealers as a demonstrator model, so this one was more for enthusiasts that needed fuel economy and so steered away from the RS6. Overall, low sales make it tough to note any reliability concerns. Overall though, owners appear happy with their purchase. On to our picks, and while the 2-litre TDI sweeps our budget by if it was offered in your market, the plug-in hybrids will take the high budget pick unless you need to tow. The mix of power and electric running for the city is what tipped the hybrid in over the V6, but if you live further from the city and rarely crawl in traffic on a commute, the V6 is well worth a look. You also have guides on the A6 main rivals of the BMW 5 Series, Mercedes E-Class and Jaguar XF to check out next. And as ever, all the best with your car search.